Good afternoon. We are back with What Matters Gulf Coast. And today, which is a very special day for us, we have two fantastic community leaders who have conducted a very, very successful campaign in the city and county of Mobile, Alabama. And I am not going to take any more of their time because I know you're interested in hearing them and what they have to say. Miss Beverly Cooper and Shalila Dowdy from Stand Up Mobile. Miss Cooper and Miss Dowdy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, welcome. Tell us what is going on in terms of the election, our just past election. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we need to improve on? Just how you two who have been actively involved, what you see from your vantage point.
Well, where do we start, Shalila?
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
I will say what happened is what I expected was going to happen. We had the results were similar to what we've seen in previous midterm elections. And it's not just a problem that we have in Mobile, it's a nationwide problem where turnout in midterms is not what the turnout is during a presidential election.
Right.
So that's what we noticed. What was different with Mobile this time was as a Black community, we had a little bit more energy. We've always had African-American candidates on the ballot when it came to our state rep districts and our one Democratic district down here, Senate District 33. But we also had a position that was a little more local, the district attorney's race and
sheriff's
sheriff's race and the juvenile court judge position. So that was very interesting to see someone running as an African-American, even though they were going to represent the entire county. A lot of the times we haven't seen anyone run on the opposite side of the ticket in previous elections. There's just normally one person from one party, and we know what party that is. Mm-hmm. So that was the change that we've seen. And I think even though we didn't get the results that we wanted, it provided us with some hope. And I know it inspired some other people to maybe in future elections feel they would probably feel more comfortable throwing their name out because they know that there's others that have went before them. Because when we have these elections and a lot of these people run unopposed, it kind of makes those who need to turn out to vote not vote. And so I know because we had some of those people on the ballot, that inspired people to turn out and vote.
Absolutely. You asked what did we do right, which is probably the best part was considering all of the collaboration that we had from various community organizations, the NAACP, the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, the League of Women Voters, Wade in the Water. Quite a few organizations that were very helpful with getting people registered to vote. So when you think about one of the things that we started to remind ourselves, even though we got to the date of registration ending, the concern was, okay, now we need to transition into making sure people understand how important it is that they get out to vote. And we still, most of our precincts didn't see really 30%, which is really unfortunate. But as Shalila said, the fact that it's a midterm, it wasn't a national election, but also one of the things that would help guide us and also help with turnout is when we have a strong candidate at the top of the ticket. So looking within the state, while Ms. Flowers was our Democratic candidate for governor, which one of the things that's probably very, very important is an opportunity for people to get to know her and had a real strong campaign. Will Boyd was running for state senator, right? U.S. Senate. And he was very involved, but also, did a good campaign. But once again, midterms, there are just some fallacies that come along with it. But we even saw, I think, on the Democratic side, turnout less than what we saw in 2018, which it still tells us there's a lot to be done.
Yeah.
Shalila and I constantly are working on educating everyone who needs to go and vote. Okay. First of all, about getting registered, making sure that you have the proper identification, knowing where it is that you're going to go and vote, knowing the candidates. This is a big struggle for us. When you look at the ballot, all of those people that are listed on there, folks are trying to figure out who is it that I should vote for, not having enough information.
Yeah.
Someone who is already in office and their name recognition is a lot easier for a number of the individuals running. But any new name on that ballot, really, it's like if they don't know who that person is, it's going to be very difficult because the name recognition is extremely key. I think the other part of it too is folks don't spend enough time getting to know the candidates and to educate themselves on who they are. We spent a lot of our efforts with respect to community events, educating people on the ballot. Here's a sample ballot. Here are all of the individuals that are running. When you look at the ballot, you will see Republicans who are running. You'll see Democrats who are running, independents, as well as what's the other? Libertarians. Thank you. On the ballot. So all of these names are there, and really trying to make sure that there was an opportunity for people to know who they are. We, I think one of the biggest challenges for us was also trying to make sure we got to young people. And really, what do you think? When we look at the number of young people that actually got out, there were perhaps a few more than we have seen in past years, but we still need to not have our young folks tell me that what's in it for me.
Right. Or that my vote doesn't count.
My vote doesn't count, and it doesn't matter. We were selected by the NAACP for one of their awards this past year. And when we attended the meeting to be awarded the fellowship, do you remember what it was called?
I think we got the
John LaFleur, right.
Community service award, basically,
that's right,
for doing the work that we do in the community.
Right. There was a young man who did a presentation on voting and talked about, once I register, now what do I do? So, and even with young people, if they do register to vote, know when to go, they said, we don't know who to vote for. Yeah. We're not sure what do I do after I register. So the education process is something that we've identified as important, but we know we need to do much more of that. We were very happy with our Rides to the Polls initiative. We ended up taking 60 people to the polls from, and that was just pretty much in District 1 and 2. But it was interesting that as the day went on, at about 5:30, I got one call. There was someone who needed a ride. All of our buses were out. I jumped up and got in my car, took that person to the poll. I came back. I get another 2 individuals from Crichton who needed to go to the polls. I jumped in my car and took them 10 to 7. I had one little lady that I was taking to the polls at the James Seals Center. And they were so glad. And I kept saying, why are you waiting? Why'd you wait so late? They talked about all the things they needed to do that day before they got to the polls. I said, we just need you to reorganize your schedule. Do the polls first and then do all of the other things. But, glad that they were able to get out. Rise to the Poll, we coordinated it through a phone number we had, working with the NAACP and the local churches. So I think that in terms of getting rides to the poll was one of the more successful things that we did.
Great. And as far as Alabama is concerned, we still do not do the early voting other than maybe the absentee ballots.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we only have in-person absentee, but when you are filling out your absentee form, you have to provide an excuse on why you are voting early. And in other states, they have official early voting, they have designated precincts in the city. It's not as many as you have on election day, and you go in and vote like you would on election day, and you don't have to put your ballot inside a sealed envelope, because a lot of people confuse the in-person absentee voting with early voting when that's not the case. It's not being electronically counted at that moment, and so that's something that I feel like as an organization, as a community, that we need to be pushing our Secretary of State, putting pressure on them, our legislators, to be talking about why don't we have early voting?
That's
because there was an article that came out after the November election, the November midterms, that talked about this voter turnout across the whole state was like the lowest in 20 years. And if we had early voting, the number of people who voted this time would have been gradually higher, because a lot of people don't find out it's election day until it is election day, and they see, all the cars and the signs at the schools, at the church, at the community center. So they literally have one day to be like, oh, it's an election day. But if we have 2 weeks leading up to election day where people can go early vote, then we can have a significantly higher amount of people turn out.
We had comments made around people's economic situation that didn't permit them, that if the opportunity to vote early existed, and particularly if we had Saturday voting, it would be a wonderful opportunity.
Yes.
Some people saying, I can't take off from my job. I might not have a job if I ended up doing that. So there are, I think Shalila's comment about making sure we reach out to the Secretary of State and our legislators to have them understand how important it really is. The other, with the absentee ballot, we had individuals who got an absentee ballot. It came, they received it at their home. And the first thing they did was actually call to say, I need some help with completing this. Because even when you get it, the instructions, I found during COVID, because my husband and I both did the absentee, it's like you really need to pay attention.
Yes, you do.
Carefully read it and then watch, make sure you understand what envelope is which,
Exactly.
where it goes. So there were a number of individuals who ended up calling us. We thought about the opportunity, maybe as we look at future election, is there a way that we can begin to try to help educate people on, if you are going to be in a position of having to do an absentee, to understand how it moves, how the process goes, and what works.
And I wonder if you could possibly maybe have some sessions. If
And
a
to
group
do that.
of us want to do early voting,
Right.
we want to do the absentee, maybe have a session where you can walk us through those steps. Because
Exactly.
I know exactly. I did the same thing during COVID,
Mhm.
and it was very difficult.
It is.
I had a nephew who came by the house with his because he was having a difficult time. So, we sat down and we just I did mine, he did his, and we walked each other
That's
through
right.
the process.
Right,
That's
because
right.
if you don't adequately complete that absentee
Yes.
ballot in the way that it's supposed to be completed,
Yes.
your ballot can get tossed out.
Exactly.
And you won't even know that it got tossed out.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a little confusing about the 2 signatures that are required
Yeah.
or the notary.
If there's a notary,
And some people
that's
think you
right.
need both. And some people are not going to go out of their way to get something notarized. And so they may request an absentee ballot with the intent of voting, early, because they'll be out of state, or they'll be at school, or they'll be at work. And then they see the notary section, not realizing you can have 2 signatures, and just be like, well, I guess I'm not voting.
And it's
Exactly.
it's 85 cents to mail it back.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that's a big requirement to have to come up with 85 cents to
Exactly.
mail it back in.
Exactly. And
So-
if they look at the notary, they could easily be talking about a fee.
That's true.
Right.
Not knowing that you can go to the library or you can go to your banks or what have you not. They don't have resources to get to those places.
That's true.
And here we are again. So,
I'd like to comment, Shalila mentioned about the young people who ran on the Democratic ticket for local offices, that I was really impressed. These were young folks who launched pretty much one-person campaigns. They started to build as people started to know who they are and also respect who they are, and they were strong.
yes.
So it was really great to see those young people who decided that they're going to go after this position and nothing was going to get in their way. And I think they did an excellent job.
And I really don't think they got as much attention as they should, even on the national level.
Right.
Because, I went over to the one when you had to meet the candidates
Mhm.
at the, over on St. Stephen's.
Helena.
At the Helena. Mhm.
Helena,
Mhm.
yes, went over there. And I was very impressed with them. We had some really strong candidates. So
That's
I'm
right.
hoping that this is not the last of them that we'll see. I'm hoping that they'll be right back whenever
Exactly.
the next time comes around.
And Violetta, that's an important point you make, because it is we've had candidates, African American candidates, who run for an office,
Yes.
and let's say they were not successful. What they tend to do is decide then That's it.
Mm.
You know, sometimes it's a matter of, and I know no one wants to lose necessarily, but what we really need is if you make the commitment for a public office,
Exactly.
you might not be successful this time,
Mhm.
but think about all that you learned during that process,
Mhm.
not only in terms of what you learned, but your name recognition
Exactly.
and an opportunity for you to go back and actually make that effort again.
Mhm.
So it really is an important step for us to really think about educating ourselves before deciding we want to do this.
Yes.
One of our challenges is also trying to make sure that our candidates are participating in the community before they decide that I'm going
Yes.
to run for an office. Developing that critical relationship with your community. It could be at church, organizations, so many places where you have an opportunity for people to get to know who you are and you demonstrate your interest in our community.
That's right.
And then when you're ready to actually say, I want to be a candidate for an office, you're even much stronger. And people feel great about it.
Yeah.
They like to know that before you decided you wanted to run for an office, you were already making a major contribution to the community in which you live.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. Go on.
To piggyback off Ms. Cooper, when someone does, when their name comes up and they're running, I'm one of the people that's like, well, you want to represent the community, got it. What have you been doing beforehand?
Yes.
And you have a lot of people that be like, well, who is this person?
Uh-huh.
And if you don't have a footprint in the community,
That's true.
it's going to be, it makes it harder for you to convince people that they should vote for you because there's no why.
Mhm.
And so it's like, if you believe that the community needs help, if the community needs representation, before you even have the opportunity to run, you should be out there engaging with them, being a part of that community that you want to represent. And if you do not win, and if you do not win, and then you also happen to choose not to want to run again, because when you run, you're putting your name out there.
Yes.
Resources and time,
Mm-hmm.
and the time and resources of other people, because sometimes you're not going to have the funding, and so some people will be giving their time for free. And so even if you choose not to run again, if you really care about that community, you should still be present. And so I'm not a fan of people running and then they go ghost.
Yes.
And it's like, well, did you really care about us? Because you should want to utilize, you should want to use your voice to advocate for us,
Yes.
whether or not you're in an elected seat or not.
Exactly.
Because you can still go to city council meetings and speak.
Yes.
You can, if you have the time and if you are at a place in your life, go to Montgomery and speak in front of the committees when the bills first come about.
Yes.
And so I feel like who you are outside of that office also speaks volumes as well. And
Yes.
so I want to see that. And I feel like I don't see enough of that. And I don't see enough of that from people from Mobile. And it is easier to do that, especially state level stuff, when you are in Birmingham and Montgomery, because
Yes.
Birmingham's like an hour plus
Yes.
from Montgomery.
Yes.
But I just hate when candidates like disappear, because it's like, okay, well, you were here with us when you was running, but now you're not running. Where you at?
Exactly. Exactly.
Disappear. That's right.
One of the things I have to say, because I get information from him all the time, is Dr. Boyd. He's still out there,
Yes.
and he posts things so
Right.
you can see what it's almost as if he's still running his campaign,
Mhm.
because he has things now. He is, I think, Montgomery or Birmingham, so he's closer to the capital where all the stuff is going on. But he's still out there, and he's putting things out there to let you know. I'm at this meeting, we discussed such and such and what
Mhm.
have you. That's the kind of stuff. We are very, I guess you could say, honest people. We tend to, it's kind of hard to fool us. It's kind of hard to put one face on, and then as soon as something's over, you change into this other being kind of thing. We tend to kind of read people a little deeper than maybe some of the other groups do. So we do have to see where you have at least some skin in the game before and after,
Mhm.
if you're successful. Let me ask this question, and this is kind of going in another direction. And I don't know if you ladies can speak on this or not, but I'll put it out there. How much, or did we get sufficient help from the state office or the national office with our candidates? Are you aware of any help
from the Democratic Party.
From the Democratic Party. Yes.
Locally, the county Democrats were involved. I'm
Okay.
not really sure about exactly what
I'm
happened.
glad you said locally. I was
statewide.
about to say no, all of them. Let me not do Ben
There were-
Harris and the crew like that.
Yes.
I would say nationally, no. Alabama isn't one of their states where they know like Georgia's a swing state.
Yeah.
It's not a state that that they focus on, and you can see it in the emails that we receive and what you see on social media for the most part. But you have to look at the dynamics and the makeup of our state, and so there was just a major election. It wasn't our state; it was our neighboring state yesterday for U.S. Senate. And I've spent time in the Atlanta area after I left active duty. And so I'm able to attest to the dynamics and the makeup of Fulton County and the surrounding areas. Georgia is pulling the young, black and white, definitely black, progressive, millennials and Gen Z from its surrounding states.
Yes.
And that's one reason why Georgia could go blue or gold. And, we're nonpartisan. So gold, they're able to elect people who care about the black community.
Yeah.
You can always bring it back to blackness.
Yes.
Even though we know for the most part we vote a certain way. Alabama, Mississippi, not so much. When I lived in Atlanta, I would hang out with a bunch of people from Mobile. And so the national DNC, looking at Alabama and Mississippi, looking at our numbers from the 2020 presidential election, I feel like they feel like the funding and the money will be better spent, unfortunately, in other states.
And it is. The decisions around things like that are exactly right. She's absolutely right on that. When you look at the state of Alabama, when you look at who's in office, where the control is, that there isn't much that can be accomplished. And then we don't necessarily have a candidate. Shalila talks all the time about on the Democratic, on the ballot, how many do you see where it's only one person running? And it might not be a Democrat that's there or an independent,
normally
right?
It's not.
Or right.
It's normally a one-party
and those
election.
are things that impact it.
Yes.
We had I think I've heard some people say that their hope is that whether we can be a swing state or not, maybe we can at least go purple.
Yes.
And I think, if you kind of go back and look at the great activity that we had here when President Obama ran, not only did you see it here in Mobile, but you saw it throughout the state. And even when the success of Doug Jones was also another piece where there was a glimmer in terms of Democratic participation. Or Democratic voting. Our approach is we want to make sure people are registered to vote and that they get to the polls. We are essentially a nonpartisan organization. The folks that, because we work so closely, though, in the African American community, because we know how important it is for Black individuals to be able to participate in this state, whether we're talking about economics, voting, education, you name it, health, all of the things that really matter for us. All right. It tends to be that there are a number, and mostly our efforts tend to actually roll out as far as Democrats are concerned. For us to be able to see something happen nationally, there's going to have to be things that happen within the state first. In order to be able to make any of that come about. And even strengthening the local parties. You need strengthening not only the county party, but the state party, working with the legislators who are, for the most part, Democrats, being able to actually have them understand why it's so important and key that there is a voice that we get them to lend, so that there's an opportunity to be able to strengthen the party, and you tend to see more.
Because even on the national level, do we have an African American from Alabama serving on the national level?
We have Congresswoman Terry
Sewell, and
right.
that's the only one. She's
That's right.
from Montgomery.
Yeah.
Or
she's from
Selma.
Birmingham.
She's from
Yeah,
Selma,
well,
but she lives in
Birmingham.
probably live outside the Birmingham area.
Oh, okay.
But she
And
reps
that's the
Selma.
only one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she prevailed.
She has.
And was returned, but it wasn't necessarily because she did it all on her own. It was
her
a lot of
district.
effort.
Her district is drawn in a way where she can win, and that goes back to redistricting. So you said we got one district.
Yep.
we're fighting for 2. So
I was about to. That's my next question.
What
What's
is
going on with that?
Okay. So on October 4th, we had oral arguments, Milligan versus Merrill, in front of the United States Supreme Court. I was there. It was what was exciting was it was day 2 for Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. It was the second day on the bench.
Yeah.
You know Shalila's position with that redistricting, right?
I thought I told you from a previous interview. I'm a plaintiff on the case, so they have so you have your plaintiffs versus the state of Alabama versus John Mayer, our former Secretary of State, so he didn't rerun, and we have a plaintiff from every
rerun, but anyway,
the scandals. We have a plaintiff from every congressional district. So I represent our congressional district. The case is named after, or the lead plaintiff is Evan Milligan. He's based out of Montgomery, and he's either in congressional district 2 or 7 because Montgomery is split in between 2 congressional districts. And then there's also Kadita Stone. She's in the Montgomery area. The Alabama NAACP, they represent whatever congressional district is near Huntsville. The headquarters for the state NAACP is in I think it's Athens, but it's near Huntsville. Greater Birmingham Ministry represents whatever, I think like District 3, the district where it's like a piece of Birmingham and the Talladega area. And then we have Letitia. I forgot Letitia's last name. She represents the congressional district. She represents congressional district 2, which is the Dothan area. So Evan Milligan represents 7, where Terry Sewell is. And so we all came together and had a preliminary injunction in January, and the district courts decided that our maps were gerrymandered. And what was interesting about their decision was that it was a 3-judge panel. 2 of them were Trump appointees and 1 was a Clinton appointee. So we,
That's
Trump,
pretty impressive.
Yeah, Trump put as many people in office as Obama did in 8 years, not office. And he appointed as many judges as Obama did in 8 and 4. Yeah. So that was a little scary. But it's reassuring to know that some of these judges that he put in the seat, they really are upholding the law.
That's right.
And so they said our maps were gerrymandered, told the legislation to redraw those maps. Secretary of State appealed it, and that's when we went to the Supreme Court. So the state comes in, the Solicitor General, I forgot his name, but he argued on behalf of the state. And what was interesting, it was, it was all white men. All white men representing the state of Alabama. We had a black man, Duell Ross, NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Yes. He was our attorney, did a great job. What was controversial about this, and you can look it up, is that the state argument was, well, if we draw a second majority black district, we will be violating the 14th Amendment. And so Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she placed emphasis on the 14th Amendment was created to help the minority. So you wouldn't be violating anything. So she kind of gave him a breakdown on what the 14th Amendment is, and that the state.
No, that was the Alabama case.
Yes, that's what you're listening to.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Milligan versus Merrill. And so what's great is that some good things came out of COVID, and that is you can listen to the Supreme Court cases as they go on, and you can go back and listen to it. And there was an important redistricting case that was heard today, but she, and I'll talk about it. She schooled him, and it was great to witness. I was in there fangirling and all. But the issue is not enough people are talking about Milligan versus Merrill. Louisiana has the same case that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, however we decide in the Alabama case will be how we decide in y'all's case. And South Carolina kind of has the same issue. So this isn't just about the black political voting power being diluted in Alabama. It's Louisiana and South Carolina. So it's across the South. Yeah. And enough people are not making noise. And so Louisiana sent some students from Xavier, Dillard, and Southern to DC while we were up there. We got people from Alabama, but it was more Louisiana people than Alabama, and it was our case. Yeah. So trying to energize the public on what it means and what this case can bring about, we can possibly have someone in DC that's a minority, possibly black, representing us. Because right now, if I have an issue that I deem Congress they're just not upholding the standards, I'm not going to contact Jerry Carl. Yeah. Terry Sewell is having to hold it down for all the minorities in the state. And she's not our rep, but she is our rep.
Exactly.
And so
and that's what's so important about it, though. She's absolutely, being able to have more than one representative,
right,
is for Alabama is absolutely key. Stand Up is filed an amicus brief with we're a friend of the court
Uh-huh.
on this particular case.
Okay.
And because we believe exactly what Shalila just finished talking about is we need to not only understand it, but we also need to constantly make sure it's in front of people so that they understand as well.
Exactly.
We can't be one day lip service to an issue and decide, okay, enough said, we don't need to talk about that anymore. I need to talk about it so much, you need to hear it so much that not that you're tired of it, but that you understand the impact and what it actually means.
Exactly.
Yes. We're constantly trying to say, here's what's in these things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what's in not only whether you vote or not, but the idea of actually being able to have another representative in Congress.
Exactly.
How important that is for the state of Alabama, particularly a state that seems to want to pride itself on limiting people getting to the polls, particularly people of color. All right. The issues around women. I mean, there's so many things that when you think about what needs to happen from a legislative and political level, that Alabamians really need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And if it's people of color that need to be doing that, paying the attention and making the noise, then that's where it needs to be.
Exactly.
As women, we certainly need to all be looking at what's going on with issues around women's health and making decisions for our own bodies.
Exactly.
No matter where you stand on that.
That's true.
And when you look at our congressional delegation, you have 6 men and 1 woman. And women make up about 50% of the population.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's
And so even if it's a woman from the other side, I still want to see women having a presence.
Yes.
Because
you
we
do.
make up 50% of the population. And it's just like a majority of these decisions are being made by white men.
white men.
By white
That's
men.
true. I serve on the Alabama Silver Hair legislators, and we actually go up to Montgomery. We spend about 4 days in Montgomery. When we vote on resolutions, our resolutions pertain specifically to seniors.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes they overlap, okay? I cannot tell you, and this is a different issue, but I cannot tell you how many years we have voted. We end up with a top 10, and that's the 10 that everyone is supposed to come back and kind of lobby your representatives to fight for and this kind of thing. I cannot tell you how many years we have voted on, and it's always either number 1 or number 2, expansion of Medicaid over and over and then nothing happens. And when you ask, because I attended some of these, our association, our retired educators, our association had these legislative sessions all around Mobile County, and I attended several of them. And I had asked the question and about why we don't expand Medicaid. And the canned answer is always, it's too expensive. It's going to cost the state. And like I told the Margie Wilcox, all the research I found says it will actually bring more money into the state. Plus, it will prevent so many of the rural hospitals from closing down or whatever. But anyway, I said all of that to say
that's right.
that here's an issue that impacts young women as well as older women, as well as male, and female. And consistently, we vote for it.
I know.
And it's either number 1 or number 2.
It's an important issue, and it's pretty amazing that the legislators have actually decided that that's just an issue they want to close down on.
Yes.
But it is small hospitals which have already closed.
That have
All right.
closed.
And the amount of care that people actually need. These surgery centers that are popping up are half the time they're not able to do most of what's needed.
No.
You can go there, you can get yourself maybe someone who will tell you, okay, now what you need to do is go to the hospital.
Yes.
So it is unfortunate that our legislators want to actually take that approach, that we don't need it.
Exactly.
And that's an absolute ignorant representation of what the state of Alabama looks like when you start talking economically about where our people are, what the healthcare needs really are, and what the state could actually be. And certainly even in Mobile, where we could actually be if people had better healthcare, opportunities to better jobs.
Yes.
Economics really play an important part in this, everything that we're discussing here.
Exactly.
And it goes beyond, we can only go so far with decisions that we're able to affect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you try to reach out to those individuals that have a greater responsibility, I'm absolutely amazed. Sometimes I've sat in on some of the phone calls from Representative Carl,
Mm-hmm.
and the discussion is, I almost want to think like, I know you're from Alabama in terms of where we are as a state, and I know you're from Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see here in Mobile and the areas that you've identified as the places that you want to focus, it suggests that you must be out of touch with the individuals that you truly should be representing. But I agree with you.
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so, out of touch.
Exactly.
Very, very much so.
And then we go right back to, here's what's in it for you. This is why you've got to vote.
Exactly.
You've got to register.
What's interesting is that about 40 states have passed Medicaid expansion, and the states that have not are all in the Southeast. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Kansas, Wyoming, and Wisconsin. And the rest of the country has. And my thing is, to me, you're not putting people first.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If we get $400 million for the American Rescue Plan, y'all was like, what's it? And our state legislators choose to vote to use it towards prisons.
I know.
And not even split it up. And you routinely heard
private prisons
at that. That's
because we know that's modern day slavery.
Exactly.
What they're doing to them and how they make them work for little to nothing in there. But they didn't even split it up. And this is why we need more of us in leadership, because the only individuals that were going down to the state house floor, you can watch the state when the house is in session, you can watch it live streaming. You cannot rewatch it, so you have to watch it live streaming unless someone records it and posts it online. Mm-hmm. But it was those who look like us, who belong to a particular party, and they were routinely beating the drum on, hey, education, healthcare.
Yes.
And I didn't hear anybody from the other side of the aisle come down and say, yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be using all this on jails. And so even if it is expensive, who cares? Being able to help someone sustain, being able to live and live comfortably and have adequate health care should be your main primary focus, especially if 40 other states have been able to expand Medicaid. Right. And so to me, these people who are in these seats, they don't have to worry about health care. And they're not thinking about everyone who they represent.
And my concern, and it has always puzzled me, how do you sit there and consistently vote against your own best interests? Mm-hmm. How do you vote against your pocketbook or your livelihood or your how do you do that just because this one person represents the party that I want to be associated with?
Exactly.
That was Georgia. With being like, oh, we'll put another black man against another black man, and these black people they're thinking that we would vote for the ex-football player just because he was a black man. And I'm like, no, we like people of character and of substance.
But sometimes.
But some people was like, that's my party. I'm voting for him.
Sometimes it's beneficial for folks to underestimate us too.
It is. That's so true.
That is so true. Over there.
Yeah.
That was supposed to just,
our position has been that what we want you to do is to, if you can identify the proper person to be in an elected position.
Yeah.
We have not stepped forward to say that it needs to be an African American.
Yes.
Right.
What we have suggested is that what you will find is that, voting for someone who looks like you tend to come much closer to at least being able to identify someone who has an understanding of what life of being an African American, whether you're talking about in the United States or just in Mobile, Alabama, is all about, regardless of socioeconomic background. Now, some folks might say, I'm not so sure it's that easy. I'm not suggesting it is.
Yes.
But you're right. How do you vote against your own self-interest? In terms of actually following one person who totally is out of touch with human beings, with humanity, is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even include the issues.
No, you didn't even get to the issues. That's right.
Out of touch with even being a human or treating others as humans.
208 people just voted against in Congress, allowing immigrants who serve in our armed forces from becoming American citizens.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it passed or failed, because sometimes the media will highlight the wrong of what was voted on, so it could have passed. But you had 208 people who voted no, and as both of us being
Mhm.
veterans, I think anybody who's willing to serve our country, knowing that it's not perfect and the issues that we have, they should be granted citizenship. When people who just come and take the citizenship test get the citizenship.
Yeah.
I had someone who was I know someone who was an interpreter for the American forces in Afghanistan, and he was a civilian being an interpreter, but he was a wanted man in his country for helping us, and so he joined our armed forces and was able to obtain citizenship. And so it's been a thing where you've been able to do that. I guess it's back on the ballot. It's back on the chopping block.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you want to make sure you have the right people in these seats, because I'm sure the main reason they voted no is because when they think of immigrants, they think of people of color.
Oh yeah.
And you want to. One of the issues is I don't think enough people hold the elected officials accountable.
Yes.
And we have a lot of technology where you can see how they're voting on stuff.
Well, I've had a conversation with a friend of mine. She and I used to work in the school system together. Okay. And I mentioned to her, she was a teacher. She never moved to the administrative level. So her income wasn't quite as high as some of the rest of us that kind of got promotions and things. But anyway, I was telling her about the fact that a certain party wants to go against Social Security, wants to get rid of Social Security or privatize it. And they're almost about to privatize all of Medicare. It's moving in that direction or what have you. They're not going to do it. They're just saying that. I said, when a person shows you or tells you who they are, aren't we supposed to believe them?
The first time.
Yes. But I mean, it's a rationalization as to why I don't have to follow that. Even though they said it, I don't have to follow that. So,
Violetta, we've been the stand-up mobile as someone asked me recently, well, what's the blueprint? And I said, our blueprint was something that was going to be done as we started to work with the community, be engaged. We were going to actually put a blueprint together.
Yeah.
But I said, the more I thought about it, I said, our blueprint has been very simple. You're right. We want to provide the best information we possibly can. And I wrote this down just thinking about being here. Created through doing research, being collaborative, and working in the community to gain input. And then we want to share it worldwide. Okay. Because we think when someone shows you who they are, we do believe them. All right.
Exactly.
We've taken a group of individuals from a variety of different places, and I call them probably some of the most forward-thinking individuals I've ever met. And they are not necessarily the ones that you tend to hear the most about.
Yes.
They don't run organizations. But when you start talking about technology, they're smart. Okay. Policy, smart. Okay. Folks who are their background and the experiences that they've had in their lifetime bring a whole different level of thinking and understanding about things that are going on around us right now, where there is great implications for that. So our blueprint is just that simple. Let us pull together people like Shalala Dowdy, who has been, we're proud to have her as our president of Stand Up Mobile, because we're trying to keep up with her. Because most of us are a bit older than she is. So, but she's dynamic, very progressive.
Very much so.
Intellectually, she's very intellectually engaged. Absolutely analytical on most issues. I can't think of anything that we haven't talked about where she begins to, the moment you mention it to her, it's kind of someone that wants to gobble it right up. She runs out and gets that information and then comes back and educates.
Exactly.
So educating us, all right, making sure that we are a part of everything that's going on in our community. Nothing should slip by us. We shouldn't allow anyone to mention something. If you don't know about it, find out about it.
Exactly.
We're doing Stand Up Mobile is working with another organization called Vivian's Door. And you might be familiar with the Malone family and Vivian's Door. They came to Stand Up, started to do several community meetings on the issue of annexation, which is being discussed now
Yes.
by the Mobile City Council and the administration. And as a result of the attendance of the youngest member of the Malone family, Giovanni Malone, she called and said, Mrs. Cooper, how can I find out more about annexation? Would you be willing to meet with me and some other young people to talk about it? We said, sure, pull them together. We'll be happy to share with you the kinds of questions that we're raising and believe important for people to ask about this important subject, how it will impact your life. She pulled together a group of about 30 young people 2 weeks ago. And believe it or not, they were so enthralled with the conversation and the discussion that we're meeting again with them tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Okay. So, and the excitement about that is that we didn't have to do much of anything. This was all we'd like to get together. We want to understand more. Tell us what we need to know and understand.
Yeah.
They've even asked for things like, can you tell us what books we need to be reading? What programs should we be listening to? What information should we be exposing ourselves to and sharing among each other?
Exactly.
Stand Up is so proud to be a part of that, along with this organization, Vivian's Door, but especially the young lady, Giovanni Malone,
Yes.
who was the one who said, I want to make sure that this happens.
Yes.
And she's very excited about
Right.
it. So
Right.
we said, all right, well, we've got a young person too. Her name is Shalila Dowdy. We just need to put you guys together.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that when you consider involvement in the community and getting people engaged, this is what we want to see time and time again.
Right.
Time and time again.
Well, I was going to ask, and I'll ask it now. What can we do? How can we help you guys along the way?
Well, I would think that the first thing is that we probably need to make sure that whenever we're engaged in anything, we need to make sure that we reach out to what matters, Gulf Coast.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Great.
We have
can do that.
a
Yes.
list of questions right now that we're asking the community to become familiar with, and that they should be reaching out to their city council representatives and the administration on annexation. These are some of the questions and things that you want to have answered so that you understand how moving forward on an annexation proposal will impact your life.
Okay.
I think what Shalila mentioned regarding the redistricting process,
Yes.
the fact that Jerry called is a Republican representative in Congress, but he is our representative.
Yes.
We should not allow it that he is not hearing from us. And we should make sure that we do that.
Yes.
Being able to carry that message, telling people to be engaged, is whoever's listening, whoever's a part of your listening audience, that's what we know we need. But we will share information with you, because
Right.
if you're able to direct people to where we are, or to direct people to efforts that we're engaged in, coming to city council meetings is real important.
Exactly.
You come there just to educate yourself, and then if you're ready and needing to make a speech, we can help you actually put that together. And we've done that with a number of individuals.
That's right. That's
So
right. And we cannot end today without mentioning the success you guys did have with the redistricting with Mobile. Will y'all talk just a few minutes about that, how that all came about, and what were the final results?
So Mobile, when the census data came out from the 2020 census, sits at about 51% Black, 40% white, which means we're a majority, which it seems weird saying minority because we're a majority in the city, but we're a minority in the state of Alabama. We're a majority minority city. And so we would like for our leadership to reflect what the citizens inside the city limits look like. And so there was a push for a fourth majority Black district. Historically, we've always had 3, 1, 2, and 3. And that came about from the city of Mobile versus Bowdoin. We didn't get that without having to go to court.
Yes.
And so litigation was required, and there has to be pushback from the people in order to make sure fair representation is a thing. And what's interesting is what happened on the local level is similar to the fight that we have right now on the state level. It's the exact same thing. And so we were able to secure District 7 with being about 52% African American. But if you look at that number, it's 52%, and 1, 2, and 3 are all above 60. So it's a majority Black district, but we possibly could have decreased the number of Black people in District 1 and probably 3. 2, not so much. 2 is downtown, is being gentrified.
Yeah.
All the housing projects were in that district is closed down, and so they actually had to take some Black people from 3 to beef up 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, a district, if you have a Black population over 70, you're super safe, too safe almost.
Yeah.
And so that 52, the administration is like, oh, you guys should be happy with that. And they didn't reach that number on their own. The map that we presented when we worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center was 52. And so they kind of went with our number too. That's the number. It
became the number that I think, as far as the administration and the council were concerned, that would satisfy us.
Okay.
All right. It was the number. What we were looking for, we kept saying, you have a meaningful opportunity to do exactly what the mayor said the moment he saw the census data, is that Mobile is now a majority Black city, and as such should have a 4th Black district. Okay. With that, we said, the first thing I said was that it needs to make sure, if it's going to happen, it can't be you just count out a majority of Black folks in a particular area. If you're going to make it happen, it has to be voting age population.
Yes.
So when we went with making sure that they didn't deviate from the voting age population, the next thing we needed to do was to figure out a way that we could get maps that actually presented our position. All right. Working with the Southern Poverty Law Center, we were able to do that. What was very interesting about it is the Councilman Carroll he actually sponsored what was called a community map.
Yes.
And that community map included the NAACP, the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, and Stand Up Mobile, SARE, and some other organizations. So that was the community map.
Okay.
But what right as we got to the vote, all of a sudden, here's another map that had been presented by 2 junior city council representatives, Ben Reynolds and Corey Penn, who were suddenly sponsoring what they called a compromise map.
Yeah, so
and the compromise map was the manner in which they achieved the 52%. And that was actually moving population from District 5, Joel Dave's district.
Yeah, so Joel Dave's district used to be a district that possibly could be a swing district. Mm-hmm. But now it's not winnable by a Black candidate at all.
No.
So where they moved the Black population, or some of the
population in order to get the 52% in District 7.
Yeah.
Because District 7 had the largest number of African Americans where you would look at as a 4th district.
Okay.
But it was through this so-called compromise map. I had press people called and said, how come I wasn't excited? And I said, I'm just totally confused about where a compromise map came from at the 9th hour that was not vetted. The community had not seen it. But all of a sudden, here you've got 2 individuals who've only been on the city council for less than a year, know how to put together a map that would achieve this particular number. So we had concerns about it. Yeah. The best part about it, I think, for the community, though, is what they saw was a win, that it was a win for 52% and for a 4th district.
Okay.
So it was like, all right,
that's the one that actually passed.
This is the so-called compromise map.
Oh.
But we still haven't seen it, though, because it still hasn't really, all of the information has not been presented. Yeah.
But I think if there was no push from the community at all, they probably would have left it the way it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been exactly what the mayor had tried to get them to do.
And I would say it was interesting to see the community come together.
Yes,
one thing that Ms. Cooper and Ms. Bacon did was from about January till probably August, every Tuesday they had somebody speaking at the city council meeting, and there was no other topic or anything else on the agenda that had someone speaking almost every Tuesday. Exactly. And I think I spoke about 3 times.
Exactly.
And so it was great to see people rally behind a cause. And it wasn't even just us. It wasn't just Black people.
No.
We had white people as well. And like I
Uh-huh.
went to a meeting and was talking about the redistricting, and I had a white male, and at I was at a rally dealing with Roe versus Wade being overturned, and
Yes.
somebody came up to me and was like, "I saw you at an event talking about redistricting with a white male. I want to come downtown and speak." And so it was great to see the unification that way. And I don't think they've had something like that happen at the city council in
No.
years.
No,
where
no.
everybody was able to
we
rally
were
behind
getting
something.
getting calls about it when how long are you going to keep this up,
Exactly.
as opposed to thinking how serious we were
Right.
about what we had undertaken.
Exactly.
And it was an important position for us to take,
Mhm.
but also for the community to be able to see,
Exactly.
which is why I think they felt very pleased about the fact that we, if nothing else, we got the 52%. You know, even if it was on a so-called compromise map.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was there several Tuesdays, and it was very impressive, very impressive.
Mhm.
And one of the things I have to also say is that you did an excellent job of rallying the ministers. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes that's a hard group to
pull.
get together on any issue. But they were there and they spoke up, and of course they speak well anyway because that's their
Right.
job.
You look, they
So,
do that every
And
Sunday.
they were very impressive.
You know, and the church used to lead the movement back in the
It
day.
did.
And so it was, I definitely agree. It was great seeing the ministers,
Yes.
you know, be
Mhm.
willing to speak about redistricting.
Exactly.
That's
It
right.
was. It
That's
was.
right.
And they were there and they were very consistent. They were there every Tuesday. And, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of them would get up and present. So
We had, there was one event, Violetta, I'm not sure if you recall this, where we did what was called a prayer in.
mhm.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
The
yes.
prayer in was, there was conversations had come to us that people were saying, well, you know, if we're not getting what we need to march.
Yes.
And the concern that Stand Up had was what it takes to put a march on
Yes.
and get people to march, you know,
Mhm.
and where and all of the pieces.
We can't even get people to come out for MLK Day in the numbers that they should.
So we did,
So,
the suggestion was, well, then let's think about something else then that is just as demonstrative. And the suggestion was made by a member of Wade in the Water,
Mhm.
that this is a Christian organization between All Saints Episcopal Church
Yeah.
and Bethlehem E,
Yes.
to do a prayer in,
Mhm.
and to come and people would pray from the beginning of the council meeting through the end of it.
Ah,
And one individual would go inside and had signed up to speak to explain what was taking place in the lobby.
yes.
And I thought it was extremely effective, because what was so interesting, we sent out a press release that now, you know, to the press, letting them know that this was going to take place. And they were more curious about what is a prayer in. So sit in, they probably know, but a
Yeah.
prayer in.
Yes.
So they came and really wanted to understand the process about what that was all about. But I said, you know, our interest was making sure that we got individuals to pay attention to what was going on.
Exactly.
But guess who we were praying for?
Oh.
City council and the administration.
Ah,
The prayer was to get them, the administration and the city council, to do the right thing.
do the right.
And just praying as they came down, as the mayor came down and members of the administration came down, going into the council chambers. They saw us praying. They would stop for a minute and bow their heads.
Exactly.
So listen, a prayer in can be just as persuasive to a certain
Exactly.
extent as the next time we march.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes we have to, you know, change with the times.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, we do. Well, ladies, we certainly have enjoyed you, and we are definitely going to ask you guys to come back. I know you said you got some things on the burner that
Yeah.
will be coming up, and
Right.
you want to kind of keep us informed, and we want to be informed. So we will maybe get you guys back maybe next month. If y'all have anything that you want to kind of get out to the public, you know, please feel free to give us a holler or whatever, and or show up so we can do this again. I think it's excellent. It's information we need to need to have, and then we've got so many young people involved,
Mhm.
and those young people will attract other young people,
That's right.
which is what we need to be doing. We got to be training that group,
That's right.
to step in, because they are our future leaders.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. This was I enjoyed it.
Thank
I
you
can't
for
think of a
having
time
us.
being more
Great.
relaxed talking about these issues. So
Great,
this was wonderful.
great. Well, we will definitely